Greetings, friends of King Jesus and the Most High God of Heaven, and welcome to our presentation. Today we're going to discuss the underground economy, how you can adapt, prepare, and survive what's coming before us. So, to begin, let us consider some thought questions. What are you going to do when you lose your job or primary source of income? Say, for example, you won't take the jab. So this is something that we should all think about, how to operate under more difficult circumstances. How are you going to get the goods you need to support your family? Next, how can you produce an income as the economy continues to collapse, to get the things that you need to survive? And from the perspective, what did people do in history when their societies collapsed? This is nothing new under the sun, so we'll look at some examples from last century or so, how people survived in a collapsed economy. And what will this underground economy look like? And finally, what can you do to get prepared now? Because it is imperative that you make decisions and act upon them soon while we're still able to acquire essential things to operate under a collapsed economy. So those will be some of the topics we'll consider here. So let's begin with this thought for meditation. It comes from the Bible. In Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17, it reads, "And he cause us all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that hath a mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." So, of course, this is a notorious reference to the mark of the beast system. And a lot of people are wondering, are we in the mark of the beast system? Are we headed there? And well, we certainly are. Now, we're not going to discuss in this video the nature of the mark of the beast, but we're going to explore the aspect that whatever it is, it's going to bring about economic trouble and prohibit men from buying or selling, except you take this mark. So how are God's people that refuse the mark going to get the things they need to survive? So in the context of the mark of the beast system that's ushering upon us. Well, one of the time-tested ways throughout the centuries is bartering. Why barter? Well, there's some distinct advantages. Now, bartering can operate in good times or bad times, but especially in bad times. But one advantage is you avoid taxes and excessive governmental regulations. So that turns out to be a nice way to actually increase your income or your purchasing power. For example, if you trade a friend of yours a pocket knife for a few chickens, there's no law requiring that you pay taxes for that transaction. So that's what I'm talking about here. Everything that I will be suggesting here is fully lawful. We're not talking about illegal activities, but lawful activities. So bartering is lawful. It also helps you avoid detection from excessive government oversight or control, the nanny state, if you will, which allows you to operate with more freedom without regulators and taxes and so forth. Also allows you to save a considerable amount of money. Oftentimes you can trade or barter for things that will bring you items for 20 or 30 cents on the dollar for basic goods compared to buying them in a conventional retail outlet. So that's another advantage. Also, you can find things that you will never find in a conventional store, like a Walmart or Home Depot or a large box store. For example, antique hand tools. Are you going to find a crosscut saw or draw knife at a Walmart? And the answer is certainly not. So you're looking for things that were made from ages past, maybe 50 or 100 years ago, when our forefathers, our grandparents, lived off the land, if you will, and lived a simpler life. There was no electricity, so they, of course, had hand tools to make and work with metal and wood and so forth. Those are the type of things I'm talking about. Also, it will allow you to develop skills that will be really essential in difficult times. How to go about finding things you need, necessities of life, whether it's medical needs or food or tools or repair of valuable items. So these skills will be invaluable. So what type of things do you want to barter? There are certainly things that you want to work on and avoid other things that will bring you trouble. So basically anything that is practical or useful, things to make things, fix things, grow things, that type of thing. We're not talking about, for example, video games. Video games are not essential to survive. So those type of things are really nothing that we want to consider, but only practical, useful things. High on the list is tools, especially hand or non-electric. For example, there is a real possibility that there could be power outages. Many parts of the world experience this on a regular basis. There could be a wide-scale power outage due to a EMP event, either natural or man-caused. So what are you going to do when you don't have electricity? Well, you're going to need tools to carry out operations, to cut things and take things apart without the convenient power tools that we're used to. Also, household items of high quality. What we're talking about is cookware, cast iron in particular, or stainless steel cookware, to make things and cook things and process things. Also, equipment to can or process food and to put it up for storage. And anything associated with that, the knives, high-grade, high-carbon steel kitchen knives are very valuable. Of course, depends on where you live in the world, but here in the United States, certainly firearms, knives, and ammunition are very popular. Of course, for home defense, knives have all kinds of uses, from small knives to large knives, and of course ammunition to use in the firearm. Gold and silver in various forms, in particular coinage, is very valuable and perhaps the best and time-tested way to preserve wealth. Things like fiat currency, dollars in the U.S. or paper money anywhere in the world, have been known to collapse and hyperinflate and become essentially worthless. After all it is ink on paper. And its only value is in the fact that people have faith in it. But when that collapses or crumbles, then real things are where wealth is. I once heard a preacher say that real wealth comes out of the ground. Trees, rocks, precious metals, petroleum, crude oil, things that you can make and convert into useful goods. Also, salvage merchandise, such as food and hygiene items. What we're talking about here is, they call it date shorted sometimes, items that you get out of perhaps pharmaceutical, drugstores, things like toothbrushes, dental floss, first aid materials, also food items that grocery stores the dates are about to expire, will sometimes show up in flea markets for a considerable cost saving, like sometimes 10 cents on the dollar. So one can save a lot of money there. This is very important. You want to avoid what I call sin items. That is, things that do no good for man, not essential for survival. For example, all tobacco products, videos like entertainment, games, and so forth. I'm not against instructional videos, but videos of no value content, drugs of all sorts, prescription drugs included, alcohol, and all related items. These things tend to debase and degrade morality and society as a whole. And so you often will see in, YouTube videos the top 10 items for barter trade, and almost every one includes these type of items. And that's absolute folly and madness. Because think about the type of people that are addicted to these substances. They are going to be unreliable, morally questionable, and dangerous. And so trading with these types of individuals in things of this nature will only bring you trouble. So it's best to avoid them. Also, avoid items that are broken or damaged unless you can get them extremely cheap, or you can buy them for salvage for parts. For example, I like trading in Coleman lanterns or fuel-powered lanterns, and sometimes you find ones that are rather rough, but the glass globe or other parts of it, the burner assembly, might be useful if you can get them for a good price for parts. So these are the type of things to consider for barter. Now, where do you find this stuff? At first, it may seem a great mystery, but if you attend a flea market or whatever, you'll say, well, where do these people get this? Well, one source that I started with was this book called The Picker's Bible, and it's talking about how to pick antiques, that is, things that are not made in the modern sense, old furniture and rare items. And where do you find these things? And so this gives, a picker's perspective. And here's some of the common places: yard sales. One can get some amazing bargains. Oftentimes it's a lot of used baby clothes and household items, but in there you can find some amazing stuff, especially people that will sell out old buildings or businesses. You'll find a lot of useful things there. Estate sales, they're common. There are certain strategies to working estate sales, like getting there early, very early, so you can get first opportunity to find things. Auctions are common, where people die or their estate's available, so a lot of goods will show up at auctions. That's hit and miss. Sometimes auctions can go very high in price, depending on the demand. Other times, if one it can get a good opportunities at auctions, so that's another good place. Flea markets, of course, are places where anybody can take items to sell, to clear out the house or the garage or a building or things, abandoned buildings. People will scavenge up stuff, so flea markets are particularly useful. Specialty shows, what I'm talking about here, is shows geared, say, for antiques or old cars or old hand tools, tractor shows, sign shows. All of these can be opportunities to find things of value. A popular one now, Facebook Marketplace, to buy and sell. A lot of people use that here in the United States. eBay, of course, worldwide, buying and selling. It's kind of difficult to find valuable things on eBay at a good price. It used to be you could find a lot of stuff, but demand is high now, but it's a good place to sell. And then perhaps the best is personal contacts. If you go about letting it known that you're interested in certain things, oftentimes friends or neighbors can let you know about a sale or yard sale, or that they have some extra items out in a barn or a shed, and sometimes that's some of the best opportunities you can find. Just to give you an idea, this is a picture of a flea market where I live. I live out in the state of Tennessee. This is what I call a hillbilly market. And you can see here in this display a lot of valuable things that probably came out of a barn. You can see various things like fuel cans and axes and hammers and splitting wedges and pipe wrenches and car jacks, and lots of valuable things here that one can acquire, and useful things that come off of a farm or a ranch, tires and block and pulley and hardware and things of this nature. So this gives you an idea of what you can find in a flea market. Now, this local flea markets depends on where you live. I live in Tennessee here, so I will skip through these quickly, but get to know your flea markets and visit them within, say, an hour or two radius of where you drive, and attend regularly, because this is where you'll find a lot of valuable opportunities. So I'll skip through this list here quickly. This is Eastern Tennessee. So what type of businesses are going to be essential or operating during a period what I call WROL, World Without Rule of Law? There's other acronyms for this, but we'll use this one. Things when society begins to break down or collapse, anarchy, government breaks down, civil unrest, and so forth. Well, you'll see this in third world countries, Africa and Asia, is most people cannot afford their own transportation. So transportation services, minivans or buses or tricycles are common in countries like the Philippines or in Africa to transfer people from where they live to a place of market or to a doctor or to a place of business. So this is one opportunity. If you're able to have a vehicle or a van or a truck, you can move things for people as a service. Security services. This is big in many places, like in Africa. People have a difficult time securing their own firearms, so they rely heavily upon private security, for example. So protecting property or business locations. You see this in the past, riots and breakdown in large urban areas. Your business will either get burned unless you're able to protect it or defend it against lawless elements, rioters and looters in particular. Alternative medical services. What are you going to do when you can't make access to a hospital? Or they won't let you in now because you won't take a certain toxic cocktail injection into your arm. Or you're too old, they refuse service. Well, small home-based clinics or first aid stations are going to be very valuable. If you have any kind of medical training, from basic first aid to a trauma surgeon, those are going to be very valuable. So having a clinic where you can treat people will be highly valuable. Alternative education. Of course, the educational system has become basically Marxist indoctrination, certainly at the university level and all the way down to the secondary level. So what does one do? Well, the most reasonable thing is to have homeschooling, church schools, trade schools, or tutoring services where you can teach the Bible and you can teach practical skills and avoid leftist indoctrination, anti-God teachings on the nature of biology and sex and so forth. I think you know where we're going. Financial services, pawn shops are always where people need money. They will trade valuable items in exchange for cash or something else. Capital investment, loaning money, startup money for somebody to do business. Coin and jewelry shops where you can exchange valuable things like gold or silver items or jewelry in exchange for currency. Mechanical services. If you can fix something, you're going to be well taken care of. We're talking trucks, automobiles, motorcycles, bicycles, those type of things. And then repair and manufacturing. We're used to getting all of our clothes imported from some foreign country, China or Pakistan or India. But what happens when those are no longer available? If you can produce clothing or fabric and make clothes, how about shoes? No more cheap China shoes. What are you going to do? The old school methods, cobblers, making shoes or repairing shoes. You see those type of things in they're considered out of date, but if you have them and know how to use them, you will have a very valuable skill. Tools, gunsmithing, machinists, all of that type of skills will be invaluable. And then, of course, local food production. If you can work the ground and grow things, you will be well fed for you and your family, but also have valuable things to trade for things for mechanical services, medical services, and so forth. So where do you sell your stuff? Yard sales is popular. That's one way. Flea markets. This is particular. I like flea markets. I use them all the time because not only can you sell stuff there, but you can arrive early and shop for things as well or trade. So it tends to be like 50 or 100 flea markets in one location. So you can, as they say, get many things with one stop. So it's a big advantage. Also, you'll see people selling along the roadside, maybe out in front of their house or in a popular busy area along a highway. Specialty shows, tractor shows, antique shows, car shows, those type of places. eBay. I sell several things on eBay. Smaller items, axes in particular, hatchets, and it helps supplement income. I'm not totally dependent on eBay. I don't think anybody should be invested all their eggs in one basket. So having different ways to sell things, if one area closes down or becomes oppressive, you can always have a backup somewhere else. And of course, Facebook Marketplace is very popular right now in the last several years. Alternatives, I don't particularly like Facebook, but I use it only for that purpose, to buy things and sell things. I find things on Facebook that are very valuable. Like, for example, I needed a part for my car, a used part, and I was able to locate it there. Used tires for my truck, for example. There are other alternatives, Craigslist, Let Go, 5 Miles. So there are other alternatives, but items where you can take pictures, list things, give a description, and arrange for a meetup. When you do sell things on Facebook, I would highly suggest that you meet up on neutral territory. At a parking lot of a store like a Walmart, or at a truck stop or an exit along the highway, rather than your home, for security reasons. Local networks, trade zones, or meetup areas, I think will become essential as things continue to collapse. This is a picture of some things I had at a flea market years ago, but you can see here that this would attract attention. A lot of valuable tools, files, hammers, axes, hatchets, garden tools, picks, hand tools of various utility. And of course, this draws a lot of interest. People are saying these things. So this is what I like to specialize in, is hand tools. And related, there's a pressure cooker back there. So I've had great success. I've been able to support myself for almost 20 years selling these type of items. And of course, in a flea market, there are other things that other people are buying and trading and selling. So you can oftentimes trade. If you have something somebody else wants, you can trade. Now, what about trade zones under stress? And what I mean is economic, civil unrest, and so forth, where things are more difficult, even war. I suggest identifying discrete areas where meetups can be arranged, kind of out of sight, if you will, maybe in the parking lot of a local church, or somewhere in the woods even, where you're not in open view, to be a target for predators. So have some places in mind where you can do a meetup with people that you've prearranged, that you know. Have a means of communicating so the items of need can be identified in advance. So we have various means: text, email, social media. I don't recommend you use Facebook or Twitter that are controlled by organizations or globalist operatives that want to monitor and spy on you. So alternatives like Telegram, MeWe, You can get into walkie-talkies, shortwave radio, CB radios. So have a variety of means. And also bear in mind that things like text and email are monitored by government entities. So having ways to do things and having language in such a way not to be obviously advertising that you're selling certain things that they might want to restrict. So we're going to be trading garden seeds today. That can mean different things. So you can have what you call code language to communicate what you have of interest. Set times to meet, preferably early and out of open view. Maybe you would meet before dark and exchange and then be off on your way before people arise. Bring your trade items in boxes or containers that can be quickly unloaded and reloaded. So you come in, you have a banana box or whatever, or a tub, you open it up, lay a few things out, and then if necessary, if danger comes, you have to quickly load up and then move on. And then have it organized. You can have one box full of, hand tools, another box full of other items, food items or whatever, that you can have them organized so people can say, oh, do you have any first aid materials? And say, yeah, over there in that box. And do your training quickly. Don't hang out and be social if things are dangerous. Trade and move on. Also, prepare for alternative modes of transportation. Things might break down. So motorcycles are very fuel efficient. Bicycles, and think about it. What did our grandparents do? They maybe went to town once a month on horseback, or of course, the God-given way, you can walk. So ponder these things. And then meet with known entities and come with armed support. If things are really dangerous, fuel stops, like truck stops, are going to be areas of valuable resources, and they'll probably be commandeered or taken over by gangs. So if you have to trade in those areas, don't go alone. Have friends and family with you. Now, I visited Zimbabwe on a mission trip, and that's considered a third world collapsed economy, but the people were not starving. A lot of people didn't have jobs, but the question is, how did they get things? Well, they had markets where they traded produce, and pretty much anybody could do it. That was oftentimes their source of income. And of course, markets where they traded for clothing items and bedding items. It was, you didn't have the new department stores. Most of the stuff was used and repurposed. So that's oftentimes what you can expect. You're not going to go in and be able to buy new computers or new hard drives or new shoes. You're going to oftentimes have to go and deal in used or bartered goods. So this is commonplace in many places of the world. So what are some strategies for trading? Well, know the value of the things. If in doubt, don't trade. If you have friends that know things, get to know friends that trade. And I have lots of friends. I know a lot about some things, but I'm not an expert on all kinds of knives or coins or silver. So I will talk to friends of mine that are better informed. And if you trust them and get to develop trust, you can exchange that information. And that's a very valuable way to increase your knowledge. Never trade straight across. That is, try to trade where, if you're making a business out of this, where you can trade for an item and then turn around and resell it and make a little money. Unless you really need the item, of course, then you might have to trade at a loss if you're desperate. Don't trade for poor quality items, worn out knives, things that are broken, cracked, or otherwise. People are always trying to get rid of broken or poorly operating things. So you have to definitely know your things, know your items, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to buy things that are cracked or broken. And there are, of course, people out there that are going to, not to be the most moral, and they will try to get rid of junk, literally, And so be wise. Do your homework. And don't be afraid to decline a trade or offer. You're not obliged to trade anything, but only do it if it's mutually beneficial. I trade a lot in the flea market, and I have people come up, oh, do you want to trade for this and that? And I quickly look at it. And if it's poor quality China goods or worn out stuff, I'm just polite. I just say, well, I'm pretty well taken care of on that, but I appreciate your offer. Be nice about it. Don't insult them or insult their goods because it could lead to trouble. Just say that you're not interested and move on. So now we want to look at what's the economy going to be, your economy in your area during absolute total collapse. And to learn about this, we're going to use examples from things that have happened in the last 100 years. So the best is real life experiences. This is where you get your intuition from. And I use this book, for example, Surviving the Economic Collapse. I'm doing a plug for this because it's a practical book. I don't make anything off it, and I don't know the man, but Fernando Aguirre survived an economic collapse in Argentina. And from that experience, he's a YouTuber now, and there's excellent information in this book about how to survive when things totally collapse. Now, here's some other people that have gone through trouble in our lifetimes. For example, the Balkan War in Sarajevo in Yugoslavia, 1991, a man named Selko has written a lot about that. He was a young man, 17, totally unprepared when this broke out. It's very dangerous and hostile. A lot of people died there, but he survived, and so his stories and experiences are available and very valuable. They're actually rather bleak in some ways and graphic, but it's the nature of things. Venezuela, of course, a socialist collapse. Jose Martinez escaped, but his family's still there, so he shares experiences there. You can find this on the internet, of course. Fernando in Argentina, he's a YouTube channel, but his book is definitely worthwhile. The Depression in the United States, 1929 to 1933. The stories of your grandparents, most of those people, there's still some alive. Listen to them. How did they survive? And there's a lot of excellent documentaries. I know a girl during the Depression, and her family was very poor. And she said literally for over 2 years, all they lived off was cabbage and sweet potatoes, and maybe an occasional treat, some pecans from nut trees or a few apples. But that's literally what they ate, morning, noon, and night. So yeah, you might think, wow, that's rough, but they survived. And so if you're able to grow some basic food like corn and squash and potatoes, you'll survive. Hurricane Katrina, 2005 in New Orleans, boy, that was an episode. People that were in the middle of that went through, basically hell on earth. A lot of lessons there. And of course, now we're in the middle of it. This corona scandemic starting in 2020, well, we're in the midst of an economic collapse. So it's not a dream anymore. It's live and it's progressing. So it's time to learn the lessons and prepare. So you're going to be in a changing landscape. Bartering may be the only way to get the things that you need. There may not be the conventional go to the bank, get some cash, go to Walmart and buy your things. That might be no more an option. Transactions will become very dangerous. Trade zones will become war zones. Valuable things like petroleum and food will be commandeered by gangs, or gang elements. So you need to prepare for this. Gangs or local militias will seek to control resources. What I'm talking about is food distribution warehouses, large stores, truck stops where they have fuel and food supplies, and a lot of underground fuel. Those will be battle zones. Don't expect any help from the government or charities. It's really going to be you, your family, and your local tribe, if you will, your neighbors. So get to know your neighbors. So what are some strategies for bartering under world without rule of law? Know who you're dealing with. Strangers will be very dangerous. This is why it's so essential to begin to do this right now, to go to flea markets and yard sales, to begin to become acquainted with people and find out, who's honest and trustworthy and who's kind of crooked, who's into what things. It will be very helpful because dealing with strangers, you just don't know. And they might be looking for predators or easy targets. So identify areas where potential trading may develop or trade zones. They will always come up, no matter how bad things get. People need stuff. Even in the middle of wars like World War II, people that survived were able, had to go to the underground economy. Gangs or local militias will gain control of resources. This is inevitable. So how are you going to deal with them? Avoid all dealings with, of course, drugs, alcohol, prostitution, sex trafficking, etc. Those are going to become, they're already a huge problem, but they will become epidemic. People that fail to deal with the crisis and preparing will resort to all kinds of terrible things. They will sell themselves literally to feed their children. And that's not a place anybody wants to be, or you don't want to be around it. Prepare to operate under austere conditions, not being able to access medical services, for example. Cartels and street gangs, these are real. The picture here, these are cartels operating in Mexico, south of the border. You don't want to fall in captivity to them. Put it this way, these men kneeling down are probably not alive today. Some of these things are almost purely satanic, the way they treat people. They're controlling human beings for trafficking, children, sex trafficking, drugs, prostitution. It's evil, wicked stuff. So avoiding this type of groups are essential. Here's another group of young, almost teenagers, look like they're in high school. This is Sarajevo. And I need to point out, those are not toys. Those are real full automatic AK-47s, grenade launchers, and RPGs. How would you like to deal with a group of these people in your neighborhood? Serious stuff. So yeah, they're going to go looking for valuable things and resources. So are you prepared to deal with a rogue group of gangsters? And of course, the last place you want to be is a place like this. This is Katrina. This is the Superdome in New Orleans. And people that weren't prepared flooded there to get things. And this was literally hell on earth. The things that happen in there are undescribable. Just lawlessness. No place for a woman or children, and even men. So you don't want to be caught in a place like this, waiting for a handout from the government. Now, bartering areas will always appear. This is Venezuela. It's a collapsed economy, very desperate. But there are people here. There are goods traded. Of course, the guy in the military uniform has got goods. They do gangster work. They're paid off well. But if you're in there trading things, you want to have friends and backup so that you're not taken advantage of. It's violent there. You can see stories about it's ruthless. People get mugged and robbed and beat up and killed. And so you want to know who you're dealing with and how to operate in these type of environments. So that concludes our presentation. We hope this agitated your mind, some things to prepare about, and how you might be able to become self-sufficient and not dependent upon a government entity or gangs to provide for you, but your network of friends and family and church family and faith family are able to take care of yourself and depending on God to protect you and provide and doing your part. So we hope this was helpful for you. May God bless your efforts to operate and thrive in an underground economy because it's coming. There's going to be a time of trouble since there never was a nation. Until that time that Jesus, Michael, our Prince, stands up to deliver his people, then we want to be prepared and do our part to be in safe places, out of the cities and in the country. If you have any questions, comments, or want to trade, please feel free to contact me anytime. My business is Tools of Yore. Here's a phone where you can text or contact us on WhatsApp or email toolsofyore@gmail.com. I'm also on MeWe, Telegram. I haven't got on Gab yet, but these are places where you can interact with each other. So we thank you for your time. May God richly bless your search for truth as for hidden treasure and to provide for you and yours in the times ahead. God bless.